I know this video is a little long. Can you get a little time consumption with that? Of course you can get time consumption with it. But guys, stay with it to the very end. I think this is super important to spotlight what fake stream, mainstream CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird media is doing as they attempt to throw Joe Rogan under the bus. Roll the intro. Hey guys, study after study shows that if you want strong bones and muscles, healthy hair, skin, teeth, and nails, you need the 5 types of collagen in your diet. I get mine from BioTrust. I've got a link in the description with a massive discount, and it'll tell you all day today. This has been trending on Twitter, and it still is. And they're making a huge deal out of this and basically throwing Joe Rogan under the bus. And I understand, guys, there's a dog and pony show. There's a psychological operation going on here, the level of which I really don't understand. Could Joe Rogan be in on it? Of course. Could Malone be in on it? Of course. Could all these other people that we think are on our side be in on it? Of course. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is the powers that shouldn't be on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and ScrewTube and Google and CNN and ABC and CBS and everybody who's jealous about the fact that Joe Rogan gets more views than all of them, including Fox News put together. I mean, just pummels these people to the dust. If you saw the view graphic, the bar for Joe Rogan is huge and the one for CNN is extremely small. So could there be some jealousy going on here that one man is beating out a plethora of networks in terms of views, viewership, time watched, all that stuff? Could be. I don't know. Can't prove it. Seems kind of strange. But those powers that shouldn't be, want you to know that more than 250 medical experts and authorities call out Spotify and Joe Rogan for spreading you-know-what misinformation. In an open letter published on January 10th, more than 270 medical experts who are on the side of who? Let's just clear the air. When the dust settles at the end of the day, who are those medical experts in the corner of? If this was a fight and there were 2 fighters, those medical experts are in the corner of Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Big Pharma. That's who they're in the corner of. And we'll talk about what the issue was here in a second. We'll play a couple of video clips. We'll show you what CNN says about it. But we need to be able to ask questions. If you can't ask questions, if you can't look with a critical eye and just a little bit of suspicion about where some of these sources come from without getting criticized by people and saying, well, the scientific consensus is, guess what? If you're leaning on consensus, that's not scientific. Scientific consensus is an oxymoron. It's either scientific or it's a consensus. It's either generally agreed upon or it's actual science. You can't, never the twain shall meet. What is up with this scientific consensus? Are people so cemented in their cognitive dissonance that they can't understand that it's either consensus or scientific? What if 271 medical experts on the other side told Spotify, hey, keep on doing what you're doing, we approve? Or what if it was 269 on the other side? Are we supposed to believe the 270 because that's one more than 269? Could it be that the 269 or the 271 or whichever way you fall on have some good points on both sides of it? Some good data? And by the way, where does this data come from? Who's funding this data? We'll go into a little bit of that, but one of the people who are funding the data is this thing called Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory, which receives $10 million for a research fund from these philanthropists. But I did a little digging, and Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory actually receives $150 million a year in funding. 34% of $100 million, which is done for scientific research, actually comes from the federal government. And guess where Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory gets that 34% funding from the federal government? From the NIH. So one of the things that he's reading from that gets some of the data from where Joe Rogan was reading is from Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory, which has direct funding from the federal government / the NIH. When you're talking about the federal government, or you're talking about corporations like Pfizer, which back in 2009, let's face it, and let's keep on talking about it. Back in 2009, CNN said it's too big to nail.
They're a fraudulent company. They said, CNN is saying Pfizer is a fraudulent company that's too big to nail. But now all of a sudden you got this scientific consensus that what Joe Rogan said was wrong. And really, it's not even so much that Joe Rogan said anything wrong. It's just that he's kind of, I'm questioning the source here. And then there's CNN is saying, well, you're questioning the source because it doesn't fit your narrative. So it's like here's what it really is. My 269 exploits say you're wrong. And because we have 269 experts and you have 268, we have one more medical expert than you, we're automatically right. Really? Is that true? Is that the pill they really want us to swallow? Is that the pill you want to swallow? More than 270 medical exploits called Spotify to take action. You know what that action is? Censorship. I'm going to show you a video on CNN where they say, no, this is not censorship. People are completely misunderstanding. There's a bunch of lies, hypocrisy, and deception going on in this, and that's why I want to cover it. Against the spread of misinformation on his platform, specifically in relation to the podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience, according to the Washington Post. Rogan, who has been on the line for spreading false information related to you-know-what in the past, hasn't Pfizer? Didn't CNN call Pfizer out for spreading misinformation? And can't you go to Google right now and say, hey, Google, Pfizer criminal history? Won't it tell you that they've engaged in corrupt marketing practices, including bribing physicians, suppressing adverse trial results? Is that really a company you want to put your trust in? I'm just asking. Doesn't seem like it's very logical or reasonable to me. Has an exclusive deal with Spotify to publish his podcast, which has an audience of more than 11 million per Rolling Stone. Hey, keep with stuff like this. He's going to have way more than that. Keep on doing all this stuff, CNN and MSLSD and whoever else is trying to throw Joe Rogan under the bus. He's going to have 22 million by the end of next month. Exploits and not calling for the removal of Rogan's podcast. Oh, really? In the letter, but instead asked the streaming service to, quote, immediately establish a clear and public policy to moderate misinformation on its platform. That's moderation of information on any platform is censorship. It's basically somebody saying, hey, we don't trust you to make the right decisions. So we are not going to expose you to Joe Rogan's content or some of Joe Rogan's content. Or we're going to put some kind of, blur screen over it like Facebook does. Or we're going to put some kind of information shelf on it like ScrewTube does. Let me show you this. This is just crazy. Menace to public health. 270 doctors criticize Spotify over Joe Rogan's podcast. An open letter expresses concern about this misinformation. Well, what if doctors on the other side are concerned about jab misinformation? Telling people things, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then you find out later, like the Tuskegee experiment, that what the government told you was a complete steaming boatload of BS. Says a total of 270 U.S. scientists. I would love to see 370 U.S. doctors and scientists on the other side writing another letter to Spotify. Wouldn't that be interesting? My scientists are better than your scientists. It sounds like religion. My religion's better than your religion. My God is more almighty than your God. My holy book is holier than your book. My scientists are better than your scientists. Really? By whose standard? Can you not have a view? Can people not have an opinion? Can people not be left alone to have the freedom to make whatever determination they want to and be exposed to whatever content they want to be exposed to? I think they do. Call that extreme and outrageous and outlandish. But give me dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery every single frickin' day. Total of 270 U.S. doctors, scientists, healthcare professionals, and professors. Oh boy, I'm scared. Oh, they're healthcare professionals. We can't question that. Oh, they're professors. They're smarter than I am. Oh, they're scientists and doctors. Oh, they must be God. Who cares who you are? Do you have the proof? Not the data, but the data supports. Well, who funded the data? Where's your source coming from? Who are the philanthropists who are financially undergirding that source? Holy cow, can people not think, man? I don't care where you land on this. I really don't. But you should be free to be able to choose where you land without the content being obstructed in some way. Sure, put information shelf or whatever. It doesn't matter. I think that's in accordance with freedom, putting an information shelf. That way people can look and go, oh, that's what the information shelf said. That's what Joe Rogan said. That's what High Impact Flick said. That's what CNN said. That's what Fox News said. Here, I'm going to make my own decision. But instead, when they censor you or censor content creators, they're actually making your own decision for you. They're saying you can't have it. You can't have any kind of access to this information, or it's going to be curtailed in some way. Open a letter to streaming company Spotify expressing concern about medical misinformation on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, listed as the platform's most popular program. I'd say it's pretty much the most popular program anywhere in the world. The letter asked the platform to, quote, establish a clear and public policy to moderate misinformation on its platform. They already have it. I'll show it to you in a second. It accuses controversial host Joe Rogan's show of having, quote, concerning history of broadcasting misinformation, particularly regarding, you know what, planned organized partial shutdown of the U.S. economy in the second quarter, according to James Bullard from the St. Louis Federal Reserve from Market Watch. You can see it in an archive. I mean, he said it. That's what he called it, and he would know, right? The letter was first reported by Rolling Stone, which quoted Catherine Wallace, an epidemiologist at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Public Health, calling Rogan, quote, a menace to public health. But we don't want to censor him. Kathleen, why wouldn't you want to get rid of somebody who's a menace to public health? They want to censor him. Of course they do. So you're saying menaces to public health, Catherine, shouldn't be censored? Well, that means you don't care about public health then, right? They want it censored. CNN wants it censored. MSLSD because they always be tripping. They want Joe Rogan censored for airing anti-VXX ideology. We wouldn't want to be anti-big farm guy ideology, would we? Those poor guys got to make some money somehow. Holy cow. And specifically, the letter calls out a highly controversial episode of the podcast from last December that features Robert M., a virologist who's involved in mRNA VXX technology. There was one, what was that article we read last week? It said something like he studied mRNA technology or explored mRNA, something like that. Is like, oh yeah, he had nothing to do with and doesn't have 11 patents as of 1989 on mRNA technology. Okay, all right. Thanks for downplaying that. I mean, you didn't tell a complete lie, but it wasn't exactly, yeah, okay, he studied it. But to what extent did he study it? Doesn't that matter? Let's see. Rogan said on air. Let me just go over here. The expert's letter countered, quote, mass misinformation events of this scale have extraordinarily dangerous ramification. It continues, as scientists, we've arrived on a consensus. We're scientists. We get our funding from X, but we're scientists. Okay. Is that the same scientists who said in the Cutter incident, oh yeah, the Cutter's products are fine. The Cutter Pharmaceuticals, family pharmaceutical, they're fine. They're absolutely fine. What do we find out later? If you want to find out, Google Cutter incident. Google Tuskegee experiment. And you tell me if we should trust the big farm guy and governments. You tell me. As scientists, we face backlash and resistance as the public grows to distrust our research and expert. The public doesn't need to be distrusting our research and our expertise. Don't tell them who funds our research. As educators and science communicators, we are tasked with repairing the public's damaged understanding of science and medicine. Science. Is that the science that's been corrupted by the evils of politics? That science? Is that the science you're talking about? The science that's become political and rests on consensus instead of scientific fact? Scientific, observable, demonstrable, repeatable facts. That's science. It's demonstrable. I can demonstrate it. It's observable. You all can see it. It's repeatable. I can repeat it so that's done over and over again. And there it is. There's the fact. That's science. Getting everybody to agree that it's demonstrable, observable, and repeatable and saying that's the consensus, that's not science. Because for every one person who says, oh, bowing down at the altar of Jabbo is the best thing you could possibly do and it'll beef up their immunity, no telling how many scientists go, I vehemently disagree, and here's why. As physicians, we bear the arduous weight of a planned, organized partial shutdown of the U.S. economy in second quarter, according to James Bullard from the St. Louis Federal Reserve, that has stretched our medical systems to their limits. And it's only gotten worse after, can you get a little booster with that? Of course you can get 2, 3, 4 boosters. And now things are getting worse. Why are they getting worse? Oh, I wonder. Oh, it just makes me wonder. I don't know what happened. We started putting all these shots in people's arms, and then hospitals began filling. Let's blame it on moronic. I think it's moronic. They're dangling this stuff in our faces so much and rubbing our faces in it. I would not doubt that they would do something stupid and go, let's just see how much they can really take. Let's call the next one the oxymoron variant. Moronic. Omicron. It's a little anagram for you. Look at the anagram for Omicron. It's moronic. It's a moronic. You got the Delta moronic? Of course I do. But I think I'm going to be oh, I think I'm dying. Oh my God, I got to go out and get a rapid test from Abbott Labs so I can enrich the coffers of the big pharma industrial complex. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we'll do that. Uh-huh. As physicians, we bear the arduous weight of that has stretched our medical systems to their limits and only stands to be exacerbated by the anti-big farm guy sentiment woven into this and other episodes of Rogan's podcast. And that's what that is. When you see that word right there, that's called hey, if you're anti-farm guy and you go against the scientific consensus, you are an enemy to public health. Really, you're an enemy to public health when you speak against the true, proven, historical enemies of public health that even Google will tell you is engaged in corrupt marketing practices, bribing physicians, and suppressing adverse trial results. Okay. Tell me another story, Daddy. I want to go to sleep, and it's got to be a good one. Make it a good fairy tale. So unbelievable that I just have to believe it. The letter further asserts that Malone is, quote, one of 2 recent JRE guests who has compared you-know-what policies to the H hoax. Oh, excuse me. These actions are not only objectionable and offensive, but also medically and culturally dangerous. But we don't want to censor him. It's medically and culturally dangerous. They have extraordinarily dangerous ramifications. What else did they say about this? It's just horrible. It's horrible. It's almost like he's going out there to, embed misinformation in people's minds so they can make the wrong decision, which will lead to their demise. But we don't want to censor. We don't want to censor him. Come on. Be honest. You do. You do want to censor him. Rogan, who has been described as by the New York Times as, quote, one of the most consumed media products on the planet. There you go. The producers and owners of CNN, and they're probably the same guys. It's probably BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. But I'm just saying, in a world where that doesn't exist, let's just hypothesize for a second. Imagine putting billions and billions of dollars of effort and energy and advertising, and you're in the airports and you're on every channel, and then this little comedian comes along and he gets an avalanche more views and viewers, and they're like devoted viewers, like a cult following. And so every minute, every moment that Joe Rogan consumes of their time is less that they're going to devote to the CNNs and the MSLSDs and the faux newses of the world. Oh, I just can't stand it. Described by the New York Slimes, let's call it what it is, as, quote, one of the most consumed media products on the planet. Has legions of devoted followers, but throughout the planned organized partial shutdown of the U.S. economy in the second quarter has repeatedly spread misleading and false claims against our overlord, Big Pharma. The letter concluded, quote, this is not only scientific or medical concern, it is a sociological issue of devastating proportions, and Spotify is responsible for allowing this activity to thrive on its platform. That is a veiled call for censorship, even though we don't want to censor him. Watch this. Listen to Brianna Keela. We're going to get some truth from the Communist News Network from Brianna Keela. Yeah, take it away, Brianna.
Podcaster Joe Rogan, who is a frequent spreader.
I'm going to start this over again. I got to put this in my ears. Oh boy. Let me I had to refresh it. What's going on here? What's going on here? Of course. Can you get a little audio problem with that? Of course we can. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Hold on 1 second. All right, this should work.
Podcaster Joe Rogan, who is a frequent spreader of COVID misinformation.
Okay, we're 3 seconds into this, and they've already maligned his name as though the people who are employing this ad hominem haven't been engaged in their own misinformation and disinformation, and we've outlined that throughout the years on this heavily demonetized channel. If you want to see more, more of what we put out years ago, just go to BitChute and Odyssey. All that stuff is archived there. It's laughable that she would even say that, but they've already set up. This is the 3-second setup to how they want their audience to think about Joe Rogan as this little segment proceeds.
Was fact checked on his show in real time. Here it is.
I don't think it's true that there's an increased risk of myocarditis from people catching COVID that are young versus increased risk of myocarditis from the vaccine.
No, there is. There's both.
Well, let's look that up because I don't think that's true. 12 to 17 more likely to develop myocarditis within 3 months of catching COVID at a rate of 450 cases per million infection. This compares to 67 cases of myocarditis per million at the same time following their second dose of Pfizer.
Yeah, so you're about 8 times likelier to get myocarditis from getting COVID than from getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now,
that is not what I've read before, but also it's like, even when we're reading these things, it's like, what are we getting this from?
Now, they're going to object to that, but let me show you something. Let me show you in this lower chyron here about this guest here. Who is this guest? Joe Zeps or Sezeps? Never heard of him. Australian television and radio broadcaster. Now, while they're quick to point out that Joe Rogan is not a medical expert by any means, they're going to say this Australian television and radio broadcaster has just put Joe Rogan in his place without saying, oh, and he's not a medical expert either. And isn't this right? This data that Joe Rogan just read, what if Jamie, who works with Joe Rogan, pulled up something that actually substantiated what Joe Rogan was trying to say? Because there is conflicting data all over the place, guys. Death counts, how many people are in the hospital, what they're in the hospital for. Are they VA double X or un-VA double X? Have they been jabbed once, twice? Has it been within the 2-week time frame? Is it beyond the 2-week time frame? There's so many variables that CNN doesn't want you to consider it. And it's almost like a false, CNN's giving you a false choice. It's either right or it's wrong. What if there's a nuance? What if there are questions that need to be asked? What if this thing that Joe Rogan just read, what is the source? Where does this come from? Are there other doctors who've done other studies and more intense research and they've come to a different conclusion? Are there examples anywhere, VAERS, I don't know, somewhere like that testify that there's some serious crap going on that somebody needs to address? And the Lazarus report on that site, which is a CDC site, dang it, says that less than 1% of the people who report are actually reporting because it takes like 30 to 45 minutes to actually fill out this form, so people don't bother to do it. But they're pretty in-depth when you look at it. Aren't those logical, reasonable questions?
From getting the vaccine.
That's interesting.
Now,
that is not what I've read before, but also it's like, even when we're reading these things, it's like, what are we getting this from?
What did he say wrong?
Talk about moving the goalposts. Now, 270 health experts.
What goalpost was moved? How does asking a question equal moving a goalpost? But where are we getting this from? Where's this source from? Isn't that a legitimate question? Brianna Keeler claims to be a journalist. She claims to be a reporter. She claims to be on a news show. She should be going, you know what? That's what all journalists should ask. But where are we getting this information from? What's the source of the article I just read? By the way, the article he read is from this thing called newscientist.com. And this is the exact article he was reading. And here's where he was reading it from. At the rate of about 450 cases per million, you know what's? This compares with 67 cases of you-know-what per million males of the same age following their second of you-know-what. Okay, where does this come from? What's the source? Who funded the source? Who are they in cahoots with? Is there any money coming back from the government or the big farm guy to fund that data? I don't know. Can we ask these questions? Is that heretical? Should we be, tied to the stake?
Calling on Spotify to take action, writing in an open letter, quote, by allowing the propagation of false and societally harmful assertions, Spotify is enabling its hosted media to damage public trust in scientific research and sow doubt in the credibility of data-driven guidance offered by medical professionals.
Hey, all you doctors and nurses and scientists and researchers who aren't in the back pocket of the big farm guy, wouldn't it be great if a bunch of people, what if 1,000 of you guys got to, and they're out there, what if 1,000 of you guys got together and wrote to Spotify and applauded Joe Rogan for asking questions, which is the clip that they showed. Now, I looked on Spotify and tried to find out what came after that. I couldn't find it. It's a 3-hour thing. I'm sure it's there. I just wanted to get this video out as quickly as possible. Let's listen to the rest of this, though.
Let's talk about this now with an epidemiologist who signed that letter, Dr. Katrine Wallace. Doctor, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Why don't you interview people who wouldn't dare sign that? Who applaud Joe Rogan for employing critical thinking skills and asking questions?
Can you just speak broadly? I'd want to ask you about that moment with Joe Rogan, but first, can you just speak broadly with the large fan base that Joe Rogan has? What is the Joe Rogan effect on his listeners?
Thank you for having me. Yes, at a podcast of the size that Joe Rogan has, and the effect of misinformation spreading to such a large audience, they have sort of a responsibility to the public during a public health emergency to protect the public from this kind of misinformation and harmful information going to the public. And right now we have 26% of our population that is still unvaccinated, and misinformation like this directly.
How can we even believe that number? While she was talking, I went ahead and pulled up this graphic right here. This is the graphic I was talking to you about before. Check this out. If this is true, this is according to Nielsen ratings. Let's see, where is it? Right here. Look at this. I want to show you this graph, and then we'll play the rest of this. Q3 2021 media ratings. Average viewers per show in the millions. 11 million for the Joe Rogan Experience right here. Look at CNN down here, 0.82. And that's probably padded. All those numbers are probably padded. They've lost so many viewers to Joe Rogan because of the nonsense they're pulling with scientific consensus. And we need some censorship that we're not going to call censorship. People are waking up, man. People are waking up and going, wow, these people are the Communist News Network, the Counterfeit News Network, the China News Network.
Contributes to that.
Is part of what he was making there, the case against vaccines, was he was trying to say that there's such a risk of myocarditis for a certain age group with the vaccine. In fact, he was fact-checked that the risk of myocarditis from actual COVID is many times higher.
It's so easy. It's like a little baby going, oh, that's automatically fact checked because he pulled up an article from God knows. How do you know it was from a credible source, Brianna? How do you know? You don't know. You didn't do the research. Are there other voices who say something different? Is there a data set that completely conflicts with those numbers right there? I think there is. But you're not going to get them on your show. Why? Because you're not journalists. A journalist speaks truth to power. And they when they speak the truth, they let the chips fall where they may. They don't care. They're not trying to pad things. A true journalist is just trying to get the truth out there. And if on anything they find that, hey, we fell short on this, then they make a correction because they're human beings. And they don't have an agenda and a narrative. And they're not in the back pocket of Vanguard, State Street, BlackRock. And there's not all this massive funding and this push brought to you by Pfizer. Is Joe Rogan's Experience brought to you by Pfizer, Brianna? Are some of your segments, is the Tonight with Don Lemon, is that brought to you by Pfizer? Yes, I think it is. There's no conflict of interest there at all. I mean, really, we should trust you when it's brought to you by Pfizer.
What did you think of his response to that when he then went on to say, oh, well, where are we getting this from?
It's very concerning because
it's very concerning that he has a question, Brianna. It's very concerning that he actually took his critical thinking off the shelf, dusted it off, and started to employ it. That's very concerning to a society who wants to just lock people into a false dichotomy, Brianna, like you guys are doing so well. Thank you so much for your effort and your service over there at CNN. Thank you very much.
Joe Rogan is an entertainer. He is not a public health or medical professional. And listening to, there has been rare cases of myocarditis detected in young males after the second dose of the mRNA vaccines. However, as the guest correctly pointed out, the risk in COVID-19...
As the guest who wasn't a medical expert, a scientist, researcher, nurse, or doctor, rightly pointed out...
is far greater than with the vaccine. So actually, with the amount of transmission we have of COVID-19 right now, we're actually preventing myocarditis by vaccinating because the risk is so much higher in COVID-19.
Oh,
yeah, 8 times higher, as we saw there. It was actually a very illuminating moment. So you signed this letter. How do you want Spotify to address his misinformation?
We would just like Spotify to have a clear and public policy to moderate misinformation on their platform because, as I mentioned before, we're in a public health emergency. So it's a responsibility they have to the public to protect them from this kind of harmful information. When information like this is on a huge platform, it creates a false balance as if there's 2 sides to the scientific information, and really there is not.
As if there's 2 sides to the scientific consensus or information, and there's not. It's our side. We're right. They're wrong, obviously. Turn your minds off. Just believe us. What could possibly go wrong? Look at that, right? That is so pompous. That is so arrogant. There's not 2 sides. There's only one, and it's yours, CNN. You say it every single night. It's Pfizer's, it's Moderna's, it's Johnson & Johnson's, of course.
Overwhelming evidence is that the vaccine works and that they are safe.
Yeah, so well put. Dr. Wallace, really appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. By the way, this was brought to you by Pfizer. Now listen to this right here. This is just a short little clip. It's like 2 minutes. Listen to this.
What's interesting, I think, about the request from your group is that you're not asking Spotify to take down the episode or to cancel Joe Rogan.
Oh.
You're asking them to create a policy.
We're not asking Spotify to take down a clear and present danger to public health. Oh my God, the sky is falling. No, we're not doing that, CNN. No.
What are you looking for here?
Correct. And I think that has somehow gotten completely misconstrued by a lot of Joe Rogan fans and by a lot of people who are, very sensitive to anything that maybe looks like censorship. But this is not that. This is not censorship. It's not canceling. It's not silencing.
Stay tuned. Remember what she just said right there, because she's going to unsay what she just said.
Asking for policies and reinforcement of that policy, because it is an enormous platform. That particular show has an enormous following, and I think there's a responsibility for media companies to at least
look at this under here in the Chiron. Say comments from these doctors say comments from Joe Rogan's podcast are medically and culturally dangerous. In reference to that podcast from not the Malone podcast, but the one from Wednesday night. What did he say on that CNN clip that was medically or culturally dangerous? He asked the question, where is this source coming from?
provide warnings when things are very easily refuted through data and evidence, not opinion, that their patrons and their listeners are warned about what the content they're about to listen to is.
So what specifically, if you were to craft this policy, what would you need to see?
You know, I think at the very minimum, it would be warning signs and banners that would be issued on particular episodes or on shows in particular that were...
By the way, I don't have a problem with warning signs. I don't even have a problem with that stupid wiki shelf that's under all the ScrewTube videos when they want to make you look at things their way. You can make your own decision. Here's what I said. Here's what Wikipedia says, or here's what PolitiFact says, or here's what Snopes said. Fine, whatever. Like the cigarettes, Surgeon General's warning, okay? You know, you can smoke, you can ruin your health all you want to. Put a warning on sign, whatever, as long as it doesn't cost the people to put that warning sign on there. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is censorship. Having a warning sign is almost like having two people entering into a dialogue in the open square of public debate. Somebody says something, another person stands up and disagrees, or wants to let the audience know everything that Willie just said right here is off the hook, dangerous. Don't listen to him, and then let the crowd make their own decisions. I really don't have a problem with the information shelf, or putting like the little screen over on Fedbook, as long as you have the opportunity to click on it and go, "Hey, I'm 18. I can make my own decisions for myself," and then swipe that thing away and then read what they didn't want you to see. As long as they're not removing it and you have the opportunity, it's still there for you to absorb whatever information you want to, so you can come to your own conclusion. I don't have a problem with that.
Kind of repeated offenders of that, of that infringement on that policy, it would be directing people to credible sources like the CDC or WHO on vaccine-related information.
They're the credible sources because we say so. Well, what if people got a problem with that statement? What if you put an information shelf under the information shelf? What if somebody says something in a ScrewTube video that dogs the Cat Corporation, no pun intended, or the FDA or the federal government or whatever, and they put a Wikipedia information shelf, and then somebody else goes, well, let me put an information shelf under the Wiki information shelf. The people that they call credible sources are indeed not credible sources, and here's the history to demonstrate that. So automatically it's like, no, we say that our guys are the ones you should listen to. And if somebody says something different, well, you're obviously a disinformation agent. That's called a false, that's a false paradigm. It's a false dichotomy. They're presenting you with a false choice. It's either us or them. Oh, there's nothing in between. I can't come to make my own decision. No, you can't come to make your own decision. This guy's dangerous. You don't want dangerous people out there, do you?
Information or other sources of evidence, since there seems to be just a ton of speculation that ends up happening on these shows, and people take it as infallible. People take it as somehow the other side of science, when really
they take it as infallible, just like CNN wants you to take what they say as infallible. Here's an example. When they decided to, a month ago, drag Joe Rogan's name through the mud, and you had Aaron Burnett on there going, he's pushing horse dewormer. And you got CIA asset Anderson Poopa. It's horse dewormer. Gosh dog it. They set themselves up as the unquestioned reigning authority. And if you question us, you are disinformation, misinformation, and you need to be banished from the public square of open debate here on social media.
There's a ton of consensus here to prove that what that information is actually incorrect. So at the minimum, it would be banners and warnings.
Yeah. And Joe Rogan, so significant here because...
Now listen to this right here. Listen to this. Here's where she unsays what she had said about, we don't want censorship.
Most listened to.
They're gonna actually read Spotify's, part of their terms of service here.
Podcast in the world, millions of people listen to each episode. Have you heard anything quickly from Spotify?
No, we have not.
Okay,
I have not personally.
So we reached out to Spotify. We reached out to Joe Rogan. We've not heard anything, but I want to read to you what Spotify said, the statement they released back in April after Joe Rogan said that he would advise a 21-year-old against getting vaccinated. This is what Spotify said. Spotify prohibits content on the platform which promotes dangerous, false, deceptive, or misleading content about COVID-19 that may cause offline harm and or pose a direct threat to public health. When content that violates this standard is identified, it is removed from the platform.
Well, first of all, I don't think that's good. I don't think that's a good stance. It should be Spotify is for freedom of speech. Have a good day. Dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. We'll see you later. Wouldn't that be awesome? And what if Spotify and Joe Rogan wrote back, screw you. I got my opinions. You got yours. Let the chips fall where they may. But listen to what this chick says.
Is that not good enough, or what do you think about that?
Well, it's just not being enforced, right? I mean, if we talk about the word prohibit, that would mean it would not be allowed to air. I know that YouTube removed the video version of the podcast, but that podcast is still available on Spotify. And that is a problem because it is clearly a policy that exists.
That's a problem. They want Spotify, she who said, we're not asking for censorship, wants Spotify to enforce their terms of service of prohibition and removal, which means she just said that she wants something that she just said 2.5 minutes ago she didn't want. It's all hypocrisy, dog and pony show, distract, deceive, and divide. And hey, Joe Rogan, I would love to appear on your podcast. Probably never happen because I'm nobody. But guys, get this video out to as many people as you can. Tell Joe Rogan, I ain't taking your stupid test to enter your studio. We can do it out in the sunlight if you're that scared. But I think we would have a really, really good discussion. I'm not sitting here judging Joe Rogan. I've been critical of Joe Rogan in the past, just as I have other things, and people have been critical of me. But if you want a good conversation, I'd love to join your podcast. I ain't looking for any kind of, I don't care how, popularity or whatever. There's some things that need to be said. We need to talk about Carrie Mullis. Somebody needs to be there and say, hey, Joe, you know who you really need on your show? You need Dr. Andrew Kaufman. You need Dr. Tom Cowan. You need all these other people. Since you've had some of these doctors over here on, you had McCullough, you had Malone. Okay, let's hear from a more fringe group. Let's go. I mean, like, if you're going to be a bear, Joe, be a grizzly.
But is not being enforced, and we're asking for more. We're asking for actual ownership and enforcement of policies that do cause public health harm and that do spread misinformation.
All right, Jessica Malate Rivera.
Yeah, and we know that CNN wouldn't dare spread misinformation. So guys, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification icon. There's something screwy going on with my High Impact Flicks channel. I have not only not gained one single subscriber in the last year, I've lost like 10,000 subscribers. And it's not because people hate my content or whatever. They may, they're just not, showing it on the back screen. I get at least 97 to 99 to 100% like to dislike ratio. So there's something screwy going on with my channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification icon so you can be alerted anytime I upload new content. Give it a like, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my private email list. And this is very important. HighImpactFlix.com. Go to HighImpactFlix.com, click the red button, just put your first name, email address. I promise I won't spam you. I rarely even send out emails. Anybody who's on the list knows. They're like, hey, have I been disowned? Have I been unsubscribed from your list? It's like, no, I'm just a Yahoo and I don't give out emails very much. But when I upload videos, I'll try to, do better at that. And I also have a bunch of links in my description for alternative media channels that I'm a part of. And I'd like it if you would go subscribe over there. It'd really help out a lot. And if you want to get a design, do so. But get this out to Rogan, man. I would love the opportunity to go on some kind of national where 10 million people see it at one time and it gets shared and have a discussion with Joe Rogan. I would have a stack of proof papers that he can bring up and he can zoom in on and take a look at, and we'd have a lively debate. We would definitely be talking about the Cutter incident. We would definitely be talking about the Tuskegee experiment, Andrew Kaufman, Tom Cowan, Dr. Carrie Mullis, all that stuff. We'd be looking up cat dog cat documents, the World Health Organization documents. It would be an action-packed 2 or 3 hours. Who knows? Maybe it would even go 5 hours. So if you guys want that, Joe Rogan ain't never going to appear on High Impact Flicks. Number one, he's probably not interested in dealing with small fish like me. And number two, Spotify probably wouldn't allow him to do that per the terms of their contract. Guys, we already know that they want to decimate the dollar, destroy the economy, bring us into a cashless society, and eventually make it difficult for us to even get food. That's why I constantly promote My Patriot Supply. Every chance I get, I turn my fiat currency notes into long-term storable food. This stuff is awesome. It's got a 25-year shelf life. And one thing we're all going to need is storable food. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. With my link in the description, you get $100 off of every order instantly. It'd be a good idea to order it while you can, because I'm not sure how much longer they're going to be able to ship this out. My link for your $100 off discount is in the description below.